Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Maximilian Martin and Alex Durant. Maximilian and Alex are recent graduates in our full-time MBA class of 2024, and they've also recently launched a startup together. I recently connected with Maximilian and Alex to talk more about their MBA journeys, what led them to Darden, the impact of their experience, time in Charlottesville, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to Experience Darden so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Maximilian Martin and Alex Durant. Alex, Max, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, Brett.
Thank you for having us, Brett.
Well, it's great to talk with you. Alex, how's everything going? How are you doing?
Everything's great. I'm here in Charlottesville over the summer, enjoying spending the time here and also working on this startup with Maximilian.
Yeah, Maximilian, how's everything going?
Things are going well. We just graduated from Darden at this point, almost a month ago. It's definitely been a very different experience being here in Charlottesville for the first time in the summer, just because last summer, I feel like a lot of us were at our internships or doing something out of Charlottesville. So it's been nice being in the city and just being able to take advantage of all the great things Charlottesville has to offer.
So, Alex, we always start these podcast conversations with the same first question. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what was your background before coming to Darden?
Yeah, definitely. My name's Alex Durant. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and where I studied mechanical engineering. And then from there, I moved to Newport News, Virginia, and worked for a defense contractor making aircraft carriers for the Navy. And then knew I wanted to go to business school, and so I took my time, tried to figure myself out. And then decided to go to business school in 2022.
Was an MBA something you had always thought about or something that came to you while you were working on those aircraft carriers?
No, definitely. MBA was something I wanted to do from the very beginning. I always joke, I wanted to study a business in undergrad, but my godfather didn't let me. He always encouraged me to study engineering, and then I wanted to go into business to then get my MBA. So I listened to his advice. It also helped that my two older cousins also did their MBAs. One was in MLT, the other one was in consortium. So I really had a good group of people helping me out to get into business school. So
yeah, even knowing just a person or two who's gone the path before, pursuing an MBA, knows about MLT, knows about things like consortium, that can help a lot.
Yeah.
Maximilian, how about you? Tell us your story. Who are you, and what did you do before coming to Darden?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Maximilian Martin. Like I said before, I just graduated from Darden. Prior to Darden, I was working in New York as a management consultant at Accenture. I loved my career in consulting, but I wanted to try out a new challenge and meet new people and potentially do something new. So I'd always kind of had a feeling that I'd wanted to get an MBA. I just didn't quite know where that was going to be. And I did a lot of shopping around, joined a lot of virtual one-on-ones. Funnily enough, Brett, the first one I joined with Darden was actually for the executive management program. I don't know if you remember this from 2 years ago. But I accidentally joined the wrong call. I was looking for the full-time programs, ended up joining the executive one where I had a one-on-one with you for like a good 45 minutes at 8 a.m. because no one else showed up. But I very much appreciated the professionalism from that call. I loved the one-on-one attention at the time. But I also got the insight that Darden was a place where not only was I going to meet interesting new people that could help me with my career later on in life potentially, but it was also going to be a place that was going to push me academically rigorously, but also be very challenging and ultimately get something great out of educational experience. So that was kind of my why to wanting to apply to Darden. And I'm still glad I did. I feel like I've gotten more out of Darden than I initially bargained for, but in very positive ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I remember that conversation. We have all kinds of people who show up for our virtual chats, and sometimes people know exactly the program that they want, and sometimes people are still exploring. So we're always happy to talk about full-time, part-time, executive MBA, knowing that people may also be considering a few different paths. Alex, I was curious, how did you get interested in Darden? How did you end up in Charlottesville?
Yeah, definitely. So learning from both my cousins ended up being both consortium and MLT. Darden wasn't really on my radar before MLT. And then when I went to the second seminar where you get to meet the various admissions officers, I was placed in the Darden table. So I met Mark Paulo Guzman, also known as MPG, and then at the time, Taylor Fisher. And we sparked up a conversation and I got along with them well. And then from there, Darden started becoming on my radar. I started doing my research. Thought it was a good school, and it would place me into where I wanted to get into at the time. And then also when you're doing outreach to the alums, students, I found that they were the most responsive, and then that's something that I really appreciated because I had no idea. And the fact that they were like responding to my emails without me really not knowing them meant a lot, especially when you go to other schools and they just send you straight to like the junk or just ignore your emails. So I felt like if I had a lot of support as a prospective student, I would get that same support as an actual student and then as an alum moving forward. So that's what really led me to Darden.
All right. And so you come to Darden, you're a brand new first year student. Maximilian, what was that adjustment like for you to be a first year student in a graduate business program?
I would say going back to school after not being in school for a while is definitely an adjustment for sure. I think Darden compounds that just because of the case method and the experiential learning that you really do at Darden through the learning teams, through the cold call case method, and just being part of a classroom, part of a section essentially, where you're seeing the same people every day, but you're going through entirely new information at light speed. It's intense. It's definitely very intense. But at the end of my first semester, and this is something that my wife had talked about a lot too after my first semester at Darden, but I was an entirely different person. I was thinking in different ways. I was thinking about things I had never really contemplated before, either from a business perspective. I got exposure to fields that I'd never accounting that I'd never really thought of too deeply before, but those ended up becoming some of my favorite classes just because I got to learn new things. I got to be around interesting people. It was definitely a boot camp in the sense that you're working all the time, but it was well worth it when I started networking, connecting with individuals from other MBA programs through initiatives like MLT. I could very much see the difference after talking to them of like, what did you learn in your first semester? Or like, what do you think about this versus what some of the Darden students were talking about and thinking through, and some of those challenges and facets of the educational system at Darden.
You both referenced MLT. Maximilian, do you want to explain what MLT is for folks who may not know as much about this organization?
Yes. So MLT is essentially it's a business network for individuals from underrepresented minority groups who are looking to work in corporate America and other business related fields. And it really gives you the exposure not only to a lot of the programs that help facilitate that process to help get you there, but it also connects you with invaluable resources. So one of the first things that I remember was a huge value add from MLT was they paired us all with career coaches, and they would walk us through like what some of the weaker points might be in our resumes, how to actually go about the process of like looking for roles, how to make sure that we put our best foot forward in interviews. And it was pretty exhaustive in regards to the amount of work that we did for it. But I saw the change after the first 2 months. I was going to a lot of these networking sessions with potential employers, and I was getting a lot of interviews. I was getting more interviews than I'd ever gotten before. And it was a really great experience because usually my resume would go into this, what I imagined a black box to never be heard from again. And all of a sudden I was not only getting interviews, but also closing on the interviews and getting a lot of offers. So it blew my mind how much those resources could help and how important they ended up being in my journey.
All right. Well, Alex, what was the adjustment like for you to being a brand new Darden student back in school after a few years?
Yeah, I think before Darden, it was very structured. Like I woke up, went to work, worked out, went to because I was focused on going to business school. But then coming in Darden, you kind of realize that there's not really a structure aside from what time your school is. But other than that, there's a lot of free time. So trying to figure out how to do that productively takes an adjustment, and then actually learning the importance of your calendar and your email. I've learned how to depend on that calendar, because if it's not on my calendar, I probably won't know about the event, or won't go to the event. That was a big adjustment, just like figuring out my schedule, and then also just like not having a salary for 2 years was something that I was used to for 5, and then good thing we saved beforehand, but just like not having that direct deposit was something that took a while to get used to, not having that, but we're here.
Yeah, it's financial adjustment for folks foregoing salary. Obviously, there's a longer term play at work, short term, long term, however you want to think about what you're trying to accomplish, around the time of graduation, your next role. But yes, that is part of the process for full-time MBA residential students. Alex, I'm wondering, what section were you in?
I was section D.
All right.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about being a section D member?
What I like the most about my section, I like that we were very chill. We were probably known as like the most chill section, but every time we hung out, like we got along. And I think there was definitely times where we disagreed with one another, but the way that we would overcome those disagreements was actually very polite. And no one was like, I guess for lack of a better phrase, like ripping each other's heads apart. And I think we were able to have good conversations in that section during core.
All right. So section D, the
Yeah.
most laid back section.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Maximilian, what section were you in?
I was a part of section E.
Okay. All right. What was your favorite thing about being part of section E?
I would say our reputation as a section was definitely not the most chill section. That was definitely D. Our section was previously known as being a little bit more of an intense and competitive section. When I first came, we had prior to me coming, we had won the Darden Cup 2 years in a row. So it was like a standard of excellence, a high bar set by the other former Section E members to achieve and to strive towards. And you definitely got that feeling in Section E at times during some of the cases that we were going through. But at the end of the day, we were also very professional with each other. Like if someone needed help from somebody else, it would be no problem at all to go up to them, ask them a question, see if they could help with the next problem set, or if they had any ideas in regards to what had occurred during that class session, if you need to catch up. So it was definitely a very helpful section in that everyone very much supported each other. We didn't really have any big conflicts or anything like that. But we were going through material quite quickly, and it being a competitive section at times meant that kind of expedite the process, I think.
All right. Some ambition in section E.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So it's always fun to hear about the sections. Any traditions from section E that you really, really enjoyed, Maximilian?
I would say our chant. Our chant was definitely a very unique one. It had a lot to do with Section E and winning in Section E. It was repetitive, but it kind of got you fired up and ready for whatever the next Darden Cup event was going to be. And it was a lot of fun. I feel like we all came together for all of those events. A lot of us had specific strengths to a certain type of event that we definitely all tried to leverage and like band around. But it was a lot of fun from that perspective, and just being around Section E and feeling that competitive nature and that we want to win every single thing that we do, kind of became our custom and our tradition.
The section chant, is it just come up during Darden Cup? Is it employed at other times?
It's employed prior to Darden Cups, after Darden Cups, and then every Thursday. We believe that Section E will win.
All right. I think that comes up in U.S. Soccer matches from time to time. Slightly different phrasing, I believe. Alex, you have a favorite Section D tradition?
Section D tradition. I don't want to knock off the chant because that's already been mentioned. Oh yeah, I think I like every Thursday we would hand off. We had a wooden letter of D, so we call it the little D. And then every week someone would hand it off to someone else from the section, basically highlighting them, what they did, what they were grateful for, of what they did that week, and just highlighting people and celebrating people was something was a tradition that I like from our section.
All right, that's always nice. Recognizing people in the section. It feels like all the sections have some kind of tradition around that, celebrating somebody for their contributions that week, or unsung hero, or whatever the case might be. I've heard different things here on the podcast. So, well, I'll say the reason for our conversation today is two of you reached out to me a few weeks ago about a startup idea that you have. That you're working on this summer, I believe, in the iLab incubator. Alex, tell us a little bit more about the concept.
I think Maximilian can take this one since he's directly involved in the iLab.
So to answer your question, Brett, what we're building right now is a startup called Mingle Money. And Mingle Money is a peer-to-peer microloan marketplace dedicated to creating a positive financial experience for both borrowers and lenders. Our vision is to ultimately empower our borrowers to be able to easily request loans, stay engaged, and avoid debt cycles while being rewarded for financial responsibility. And then for our lenders, we're striving to offer a secure, profitable, and personalized investment opportunity. So essentially finding a ZOPA, a zone of possible agreements for both sides.
Where does this idea come from?
That is a great question. So the journey for myself started around 9 months ago. I had been talking to a number of MBA students initially who were talking about needing bridge loans, and that the financial aid that they were getting was great in terms of the student loans, but that because of the MBA experience and a lot of people want to travel and expenses can get quite high at times, just needing another source of income for the time being. And initially, I was going to build something like this for them, but started to look around the market some more, started to realize there was actually an even larger market of underserved individuals with much lower capital requirements. And that essentially became individuals that I now call the underbanked. And what that means is the underbanked are individuals who, yes, live in the US, have bank accounts, but primarily utilize non-banking credit products. So they'll go to payday lenders, they'll go to pawn shops, they'll take on title loans or utilize rent-to-own services. And when I read more about this market and I thought about my own childhood growing up in the Mississippi Delta, I was like, you know what? I think this is something that not only seems like a social problem that I'd like to solve, but I think that it is feasible and there is a market need for it. So that kind of became the start of the platform itself. And then it took so many iterations from I needed to find where the specific market was located. Could I find it online? Where was it out in the world? Should I go back to my old community to see if there are individuals that might need something like this? And ultimately, we're able to find something online. So we found a social media site where a lot of this informal lending was already happening. The types of borrowers that we were looking for to serve were already there, and they were looking for microloans, essentially loans that are under $1,000. And microloans to this in this specific group of customers, these borrowers, it's life changing. It could be the difference between getting your car fixed so you can keep on going to work, being able to pay your light bill, medical expenses from an unforeseen accident or circumstances that may have occurred, or even a bridge loan just to get you between paychecks. So ultimately, that's what I envisioned our our customer group to be, and then ended up finding them. And after that, everything was pretty much tailored to finding the pain points, finding the customer pain points that our customers might have. And it takes you back into like the Darden experience of like multiple different fields of study, from marketing to economics to finance, to data analysis as well. Because at the end of the day, if you're building a product, you want to make sure that you have the data to support it. You're not just doing guesswork, but you're actively trying to predict the future with data points that make sense and are relevant. So in a lot of ways, the Darden curriculum was pretty integral. As I was doing a lot of these things in class, I was also doing it on the side for my own personal reasons and to build a better product.
Yeah, and I came up with the, or I didn't come up with the idea. I discovered like what I wanted to do and be in the microfinance space. I want to say like 6 years ago. So part of like the MBA process is like when you're writing your essays, you want to know your short-term and long-term goals and why those are your goals. Then after a year, after undergrad and working, I was reflecting on myself and what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. I came to the conclusion like I come from an income inequality background, meaning my mom's side was better off economically than my dad's. But then also my mom's side, that side of the family fled from two countries in Latin America, Cuba and Venezuela, which are known for political and economic instability. So two key takeaways of that was that I hate big governments and I hate poverty. So those are like the things that I wanted to tackle. And then in doing so, I did some research, and then I came across Mohammed Yunus, a Bangladeshi economist who started the microfinance movement and founded Grameen Bank in Bangladesh. And then I saw that not only did he empower the people in his community, but then he found that there was a repayment rate of above 97%. So what that goes to show is that like people don't want handouts; they just want opportunity for credit and to help them grow. And then it impacted me so much that that's what I wrote on my Darden essays. Ideally, I wanted to do it in Cuba or Venezuela, and it was going to be a 20-year plan. But then when one of our mutual friends told me what Maximilian was working on, I immediately texted Maximilian and told him I wanted to be a part of this, because I know like the positive change that we could do if this is done correctly.
So Maximilian, I'm curious, how do you get people comfortable with loaning maybe perfect strangers money in this kind of way? I don't know, maybe that's a very crass way of putting it, but I mean, is there any kind of personal connection to the people that are loaning this money out? And how do you get people comfortable with this?
That is a fantastic question. Yes, the idea of money to a lot of people is, and especially loans, are kind of a taboo subject. It's kind of an icky subject that not a lot of people want to think about, but that everyone is directly or indirectly involved in. To answer your question, the main reason we had to include a lot of features that we did for this web product was so that we could essentially create a community. What Alex was talking about before in regards to Grameen Bank and the efforts of Mohammed Yunus, what he had found 50, 60 years ago at this point now, was that if you put individuals into a social community, there's a lot more of a backlash to taking money from a stranger that has trusted you, that is part of that same community. So we knew that in order to get the repayment rate right, we needed to create something that people wanted to be a part of. And not only was it going to be something that they were going to be a part of, but there had to be a deeper underlying connection between the two parties, the borrower and the lender. So we tackled that in two ways. One, by creating a platform that is community-centered, where borrowers and lenders are supposed to come to a mutual agreement, a conclusion. But before we even do that, we're able to actually match our borrowers and lenders based on their interests. So we can help foster that community and that personal connection, so that one borrower and one lender actually have something to talk about. a large part of our market research was that we had found differing rates of repayment for essentially three tiers. The first tier, with the lowest rates of repayment, were actually those between borrowers. It didn't matter on income. It also didn't matter on credit score. But one of the big things that we found was the rates of lowest repayment were actually between borrowers and financial institutions. There is no connection between the two. And while the bigger financial institutions, the banks, the credit unions, the credit cards, they don't have a positive power to force people to pay loans back. That's only a negative power. So essentially, it's the impact to the credit score, the seizure of your assets, collateral on income, that don't really incentivize people to do the right thing in a lot of ways. It's a faceless, nameless institution at the end of the day. The highest rates of repayment at the bottom tier were actually between friends and family, which makes sense because there's a lot more of a social impact in your social life that can occur. If you don't pay a loan back to your uncle, your aunt, your father, your mother, you potentially could be ostracized in your own family. And from what we've noticed, a lot of this in regards to credit comes down to behavioral psychology. It's that social contract. So we're actually in the middle. We're between the financial institutions and friends and family loans, simply because the market for friends and family is actually quite smaller because a lot of people still don't feel comfortable talking to their friends and family for money. But they are actually a lot more comfortable from our research talking to strangers, albeit you need to make sure that there's a connection between the two parties. But from what we've seen on a lot of the online communities that where informal lending is happening, as long as there's some kind of connection, as long as they're a part of community, the repayment rates are actually quite high.
So, Alex, you mentioned that you knew that you wanted to get into microfinance when you were looking at business school. Um, you obviously connected with Maximilian on this idea. When you sort of look at this and you sort of think about the impact that this product can have, like what's exciting to you about that?
Definitely. I mean, I think one, it's like I mentioned, personal, me coming from the income inequality background, but then I like just knowing how Muhammad Yunus not only empowered his community, but then also Muhammad Yunus like empowered women in Bangladesh and in those countries, like women don't really have a voice. And he gave them a voice and then gave them opportunity to be independent. Kind of like looking at my own family, there's something similar there that I want to help out and overcome. And just I just think helping people at the end of the day and then not taking advantage of their economic situation and just helping uplift them, to me is what drives me forward.
Maximilian, I'm curious about, I'm just going to ask a few more technical questions because I'm just fascinated by this idea. Like, how do people agree to the terms of the loan? Is there some standard language that you use, or like, how do you figure out if it's a good deal for both people, I suppose?
That is a great question, and it took us a long time to figure out how to build that as a feature. So one of the things that separates our platform from a lot of other things in the market, especially in regards to lending in general, is we give our borrowers autonomy. What we found specifically with microloans is that if we allow our borrowers control over how much they're asking for, their interest rate, their repayment dates, we're actually getting higher rates of repayment because they're trying to tell you, this is what I can pay you back, instead of what the market has traditionally done, which is, okay, this is the amount of money that you're looking to borrow. This is the set interest rate that we're going to hit you with. And whether you can pay it back or not, it's a win-win situation for us either way. We found that especially problematic, considerably so because a lot of these borrowers are looking for microloans. So under $1,000, some of them are looking for $50 to make ends meet, $100, $150. And we felt that making the process as simple to put together a loan request as possible, So there wasn't a lot of confusion and weird terms that people not really familiar with the lending process are at times going to be able to understand. But making it as simple as possible to not only put up a loan request, but then also see your loan in a standardized template with pictures and videos, items that you can make it a lot more personalized, to really holistically show a lender on the other side. This is who I am as a person. This is how I want my character to be perceived. And this is what I need the funds for. And then allowing the borrower and lender to chat, to message each other, to get a feel for whether this transaction is going to go well for them or not. And then finally, at the end of the day, this is a marketplace. So we set up this marketplace with the idea in mind that we want to make sure that our borrowers can get the best possible deal. So hypothetically, one of the features that we set up was actually called an offer. So a borrower could put out a request for $200 at 10% interest, and then two separate lenders could actually bid on said borrower, and then the borrower gets to choose which deal works better for them, and they get to connect with both of the lenders and see which person they'd rather work with. So it's a process that the borrower and the lender ultimately have to come to agreement to, but we set up the borrowers with enough autonomy, and power that they can actually dictate what they can and can't pay back and what's feasible for them at the end of the day.
Very interesting, how all of that works. So where do things stand with the business, the venture right now? Alex, where are things currently? How are things going?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're like Maximilian is working on the iLab right now, but then also we're talking to other people, interviewing with other accelerators, and then developing those packages. And then I think next month we're going to try to raise capital. That's like on the external end. On the internal end, we're still developing the product, and then we're creating marketing campaigns, trying to build awareness to get people signed up on our website. So then we're ready for beta testing. We can see like the customer experience and see how we can improve, and then do a final an official launch of the product, and then hopefully get people on board and start making a change.
Maximilian, how has it been being in the iLab? Has it been helpful to you? How's it going so far?
The iLab has been really great so far. We had our first session in June, the first week of June, where we got to meet a lot of the other iLab participants. We all got to pitch our ideas. It's been a mix between, I want to say, having experienced entrepreneurs come into the iLab to speak with us, to tell us about the highlights of their entrepreneurial journey, but also some of the lowlights, because that's life and it happens. And then also having professors from Darden come in to talk about specific subjects. Like we had Ed Freeman come the first week to talk about stakeholder management, how we view stakeholders, and ultimately, as we're going through this entrepreneurial process, what our why is. Like what gets us up out of bed every morning to keep persevering, because entrepreneurship is not easy at the end of the day. But to essentially keep persevering, and some of the aspects that we want to keep in mind for our journeys. So it's been good in the sense that some of it has been classroom related, but at the same time, we've also gotten real life experience and stories from big time entrepreneurs, which has been very helpful.
Alex, I'm curious, you mentioned that you wanted to work in microfinance. Did you imagine you would be involved with a startup? After your time at Darden, is that something you foresaw as you were contemplating your post-MBA path?
No, definitely not. Like I said, I thought it was a 20-year plan, because I was gonna wait my time to go into Latin America. But as soon as like I found out that Maximilian was working on this, I think this was like too unique of an opportunity that I didn't want to pass up. And I've always been a big believer and a big supporter of microfinance, and I wanted to put my money where my mouth is, and go ahead and join on this crazy ride that we're about to embark on. So Maximilian just expedited it for me. He saved me 20 years of wasting my time.
Maximilian, same question for you. Did you imagine you would be involved with a startup after your time at Darden?
Um, that is a great question. So when I first was writing my MBA application, I mentioned I wanted to do a startup. I didn't know what the startup was going to be in the future. But it honestly kind of happened in a haphazard way. I was thinking about after year one at Darden, I kind of put my head up and I was like, okay, I've been underwater for a little bit. I've been really focused and disciplined in the Darden curriculum. I wanted to pick up as much information as I possibly could for whatever I thought was going to be next. I thought all of it was going to be very valuable and useful. Um, but ultimately didn't come to the conclusion of wanting to start a venture for sure until I took Effectual Entrepreneurship Q4. I took the class with Saris, who's the founder of Effectual Entrepreneurship. And essentially, the whole concept of effectual entrepreneurship in my mind was to demystify the entrepreneur's journey, where it wasn't one where you're alone and you're always out of money and you're on a ramen noodle diet, which obviously it can happen as well. And that's sometimes just part of it. But more so that when you're starting a new business, especially from an effectual perspective, you're not going about it in a causal way. You're going about it in an effectual way where you're collaborating with other people. So the first thing that I did in that process was I looked at what my bird in hand was, which is what do you have and what do you know? The second thing I did was, okay, now that I figured out what I know, who could I talk to figure out the rest? And it happened very symbiotically. I would talk to people about what I'm working on. I wasn't trying to pitch them. I wasn't trying to convince them. I was really just explaining to them what I was interested in, what I was trying to do. And it was amazing what came back. I want to say the greatest achievement out of all that was probably Alex Durant. I would talk to Alex Durant for like 10 seconds and I quickly figured out he actually knew a lot more about the space than I did. And at first I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know because we're still so early on in the process. And we're still developing everything. I don't know what you could potentially do, but Alex is persistent. And eventually I was just like, you know what? This is exactly what we need. I didn't know at the time, but this is what effectual entrepreneurship is. This is what I learned at Darden. This is what I learned in my classes. And I'm just going to lean into it and do it. And that's ultimately how a lot of it came to be too, of recruiting the team, making sure that it's not just one person's brain vision as we're trying to embark on this quest, but that we're actively shaping it together to make it the best product that it can be for our customers.
Yeah, Alex, I'm curious. How does this work as a business? So understand obviously the impact that it can have here, but how does it work as a business?
How this works as a business is that we're creating a marketplace of both borrowers and lenders. So then the borrowers get to set loans at their terms, and also like time frame that they want to pay and what their principal is. And then the lenders look at the marketplace and they pick out which loans they want to support and fund. But then as our revenue drive, we see a lot of, we want to go into like the subscription space. So we would charge lenders a subscription to have access to fund these loans. But then, so we'd figured that they would make enough money on the interest so that the interest that they make can help fund their subscription. So it's like automatically paying itself out. That's how we see one form of the revenue end. And then I think for the borrower end, I think Maximilian can add more, but the way that we were seeing is a similar subscription based. If a borrower decides to subscribe, they just have access to, they have quicker access to for their loans to be fulfilled. Maximilian, do you want to add anything more?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, ultimately, our revenue model is based on what we can offer the lenders at the end of the day. We saw Duolingo as a big inspiration in that because these are microloans, we wanted to make sure that the borrowers are not even more overburdened with loans that they potentially already have a hard time trying to afford. But at the same time, the challenge was, how do we make sure that these loans get paid back? How do we make sure that our underwriting model is accurate enough that we can actually sell this as a premium subscription service to our lenders? And that was a significant challenge. So I would say, in regards to our project and product timeline, a good amount of time has been spent trying to ensure that not only are we providing a valuable service to the borrowers, but to our primary customers, who are the lenders, making sure that the process still remains profitable for them and at the same time secure.
Well, Maximilian, I'm wondering what's next for Mingle Money as you look ahead in the coming months.
Well, the big one is going to be our hard launch. So as of now, we have a landing page, minglemoneyapp.com, where we have been signing up beta testers for our hard launch. But come end of July, early August, we have set our target date to launch not only on the Apple App Store, but also on the Google Play Store, for customers from around the US to come and utilize our platform and figure out if they can find an agreement.
Alex, what's exciting to you about what's next here for Mingle Money?
Well, we said hard launch. I think Max keeps saying away my answers. What's looking forward to the next coming months? I think, well, we're still figuring out where we're going to be in the next. There's a lot of uncertainty, which is actually, like, I think before Darden I would have been scared, but now, like, I feel I look forward to it, and I'm like excited for what's to come. We don't know where we're going to live yet. I think that's exciting. Like, we're still figuring that one out personally, but yeah, I think what we're looking forward to is, besides launching, is just keep on growing, getting the word out there of what we're working on, getting more people into our community, and yeah, helping out and creating value.
Yeah, that earlier response was kind of a natural segue to a question I was going to ask you is, how has Darden helped you as you think about the work that you're doing here with this venture? Obviously, you're more comfortable with ambiguity and uncertainty now. Anything else that comes to mind, Alex?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's like, as long as you can, like, well, I'm coming with student loans. So as long as you can pay down your student loans, feed yourself, and give yourself a place to give yourself some shelter, nothing else really matters. As long as you're, like, engaged and devoted to your mission, everything else will fall back in place eventually. But I think as long as you can cover those three things, you're good, and don't worry about the excess, the status, or the titles, or just do what your conviction tells you.
Maximilian, I'm curious, how has your time at Darden helped you with the work you're doing here with Mingle Money?
I mean, I don't think I could have done this without Darden, to be quite honest. Like I mentioned before, the curriculum itself was outstanding in the sense that I felt like I could run a business. This is the simplest way to put it. Like, I felt like I could run a business. I felt like I had the concrete, not only financial skills and hard skills, but also soft skills to be able to do so. And then I would say the support I got at Darden as well. Like, no, it didn't matter which classmate I was talking to. Everyone was very eager to listen and chime in with their own advice or opinions. To the professors that we've talked to, who have not only supported what we're doing as a mission, but also given us advice and feedback. And then other aspects too. So I guess on a tangent, one of the things I definitely needed after year one was a little bit of a break from Darden. And Darden was able to provide that in the form of a study abroad in Italy that I got to take. And it gave me a lot of time to not only broaden my horizons from a academic business perspective, took a lot of fashion and luxury classes, but it also gave me time to really reevaluate what I wanted to do, what Mingle Money was ultimately going to look like and be, but also just gave me a bit more of a world perspective that Darden incentivizes you to take from the Darden global experiences, where you get to travel to a different country and learn what's going on in a specific business perspective or a study abroad. So I think all of those things cumulatively allowed me to be successful with Mingle Money and really figure out not only what I want to do with it, but how I was going to do it.
The last question for both of you. Alex, what's a piece of advice you would have for our prospective student listeners here?
Like Ed Freeman asked us that 2 weeks ago. I think I'm gonna use the same one. I think come into Darden definitely with a plan, but then also be ready to take life's punches in the face, and be happy and embrace them. 'Cause I think, like, I'm gonna copy Sylvester Stallone's quote from Rocky Balboa: "Life isn't how hard you hit; it's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward." And I think that's what we're going to be doing in Mingle Money. We're going to get a lot of hits in the face, but we got to, like, take it and keep moving forward. I think that's my advice to people coming into business school in general.
All right, I think that's the first answer to that question that's referenced Rocky. So I appreciate that. Maximilian, how about you? What's a piece of advice you would share with our prospective student listeners?
I guess one piece of advice I would give is don't be so hard on yourself in regards to, like, your 5-year or your 10-year plan. There are so many things that can happen while you're at Darden, and to keep your mind open to a lot of the different job opportunities that you might not have considered before, is definitely something that, like I said before, entrepreneurship wasn't something I 100% knew I wanted to do. It kind of just happened throughout the Darden process and experience, but I was very open to something like that happening, and I'm glad I did, because I'm very happy now with what I'm doing and what we're about to achieve, and it's exciting and I love it. And I don't think I would have been able to do it if I would have been a lot more set in my ways, and there's only one way to success, and if it doesn't look like that, then I don't want it. So just be adaptable, be flexible, and be open-minded.
Well, Maximilian, Alex, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and best of luck with Mingle Money. Look forward to hearing more about the venture in the coming months. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you for having us.
And that was my conversation with Maximilian Martin and Alex Durant, two recent graduates in our full-time MBA class of 2024. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.